Hey guys, guess what? It's time for Christmas in July. I love Christmas in July. I bought this from Walmart last year. It's a little Santa bust, but I'm going to be using it for something different. I'm going to use it for a topper on either a box or a canister or something like that. So let's get to getting. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go over him with a little isopropyl alcohol and a piece of paper towel. What this does is it just removes any oils that it might have been on my hands or in factory production. So it just gets rid of all of that. So I'm going to wipe it down really good. And I'm going to use some black, coal black Fusion mineral paint. I love this paint. It's highly pigmented. I use it all the time. It will cover this white material in one coat. And you're probably wondering why I'm painting Santa all black. Well, I want to give him a vintage vibe. So the first thing you need to do is start with a base color that's dark like this. If I would have been smart, I would have stuck a dowel in that hole at the bottom so that I could have held it and painted it all in one fell swoop. But I didn't do that. So I had to do it in two sections. But hey, that's okay. Necessity is the mother of invention, so I just did it in two different parts. First, I'm going to dry up part one, and as it's drying, I'm going to go in and just touch it up a little bit in sections that I may have missed. Now you want this pretty dry because I don't want my fingers to pull off the paint because it's not dry as I'm touching it. So that took a hot minute, but we got it done. Once the black paint is completely on the Santa, we'll give it a quick dry. And I'm going to be using the new inexpensive crafter's paint from Hobby Lobby. I really like it. It works really well, much better than I anticipated. And I'm going to go in and take it from the top and start with the hat. And I'm taking a smaller pointy tipped brush so I can get into all the nooks and crannies and crevices of this piece. It has a lot, and having that pointy tip really helped. Now, looking at it while the paint is wet, you'll see that it's a bright red. And I'm not even really giving it a real good coverage because I want some of that black to poke through to give it that vintage look. But once it dries a lot darker and it looks way more vintage than when you first put the paint on. Okay, moving down to his jacket, I'm doing the same thing. And in some of the spots where it's hard to get in, I just put a little bit extra paint on the brush. And my technique is to just dab it in there as opposed to stroke it with the brush. Because sometimes when you stroke it with the brush, it gets in areas you don't want it to get in. It's so much easier to just dab the paint in all those little crannies with the pointy tip of the brush. Hope that makes sense. Even now, can you see the difference between the color of the red in the coat and the hat? Look at how much it's darkened. Gives it more of a matte finish when it's dry. Now I'm trying to be careful to keep the red paint off of the little candlestick looking base because that's going to be a completely different color. And while I'm thinking about it, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do. Would love to have you as a subscriber. And let me know where you're watching from. I love to know that. Okay, we're just going to dry this up a little bit and we can go on to the next step. Here I'm just using a skin tone beige. You can use any skin tone that you prefer. And I'm going in with a really tiny script liner brush on this one. Simply because the face is just a small area. It has a lot of detail in it, and I don't want to mix the paints and have to go in and do some touch-ups with this one. So basically what I do is what I told you to do with the pointy tipped brush. I just put a lot of paint on it and I dab it in as opposed to stroking it in. Once I get it all around the face. I'm just going to give it a quick dry because I need to do those bushy eyebrows that Santa has in this one. And I'm just using a white chalk paint from Folk Art. I'm putting the paint on really thick on the end of that script liner brush, almost to give it a textural look. The piece already has texture, but this gives it a little something extra. And I do that with the eyebrows and the mustache and the beard. And let's not forget that white trim along his hat and the little pom-pom on the end. There are so many little cute details in this piece. I got this from Walmart last year. I hope they have them again this year. I'm hoping to get the bigger one this year. A Santa bust that can sit on our mantle. And he's really starting to look very vintage. It reminds me of the stories my mom used to tell me when I was a child growing up. And she'd tell me the stories about her growing up on a farm in Kentucky and what Santa Claus was to them. In my mind, if I could picture a Santa that was her Santa, I would picture this one. Sweet and magical with all the charm that Santa has, and that every good little girl and boy longs to have visit their home at Christmas. The last little piece of white is the fur on his jacket, and I'm just tapping that in and around his beard to finish it up before I go in and put in the facial details. Okay, here I'm going to use a very fine script liner brush, and I'm using just the black, and I'm outlining the eye and the eyeball in black. And then I'm going to go in after I dry that really well. I need that dried really well because I'm going to put in just a tap of white to put that little gleam and that sparkle in his eye. And it needs to be very dry because we don't want that gleam muddied by the black paint. So I'm going to take a teeny tiny brush. You can use a brush or you can use a dotting tool that they use for doing acrylic nails. That works as well. Or even the back of a small paintbrush. But I just take a tiny little bit of the white and tap it in there, and a little bit of red at his bottom lip just to bring him to life a little bit. Now here I'm taking a little bit of actual makeup I got from the Dollar Tree. It's a little blush, creamy blush, and I'm putting it on my brush and blending it out on his little cheekbones and at the very tip of his nose. That's where he gets chilly. And I think he looks absolutely adorable. What do you guys think? Let's put in a couple finishing touches. I'm using this antique gold wax by Pent Art, and I'm using an essential stencil brush, the tiniest one they have, and I'm going over it at the base, right over that black, and giving it an antique gold look at the bottom. I love the way this looks. It really goes quickly, and it just really packs a punch. I slow the camera down so you can see it up close and personal. Okay, tomorrow when the project is completely dry, I'll be using this Fusion Mineral Paint Tough Coat to coat the whole thing to keep it from chipping. But the last step I want to do is I want to put on some Stickles glitter. Many of you have seen it in a bottle. Did you know it comes in a little jar as well? I have that in my Amazon store. If you're interested in checking it out, I'll leave the link in the description of this video, along with the link of the essential stencil brushes. I recommend them very highly. I hope you enjoyed my first Christmas in July Santa project. Let me know in the comments if you would do a vintage style or would you make him more of a classic Santa. Thanks so much for watching. It's Christmas in July, friends. Didn't my Santa handle come out darling? Looking for the perfect box to mount him on. Maybe he'd be cute on a cookie jar. Oh my, the possibilities are endless. Where would you use him?